Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 613. Leonard's Investigation. Lone Kingdom, Eastchester County, Stone City. Having left the manor, Audrey moved into a villa. After she finished engaging in social gatherings with the local nobles, she sent her servant to the Varvat Bank to withdraw a sum of cash. She didn't need to worry about this any further. She could easily pay off the £2,000 she owed Mr. Fool's Blessed, and she could also pay the £1,800 she owed Mr. World for the psychiatrist's characteristic. 15 minutes later, Audrey opened the room to her bedroom and glanced at her personal maidservant, Annie, who was monitoring the servants while they did their work. She looked down at the golden retriever who was sitting by the side of the wall and smiled. With a smile, she suppressed her voice and asked with shining eyes, "Susie, you'll receive a gift in a while. Are you looking forward to it?" If it were in the past, Audrey would have definitely said, "Susie, your present is here," making the golden retriever realize that she could find the actual item in the room as well. Otherwise, it was very easy for Susie, who had been studying the basics of mysticism, to guess that Audrey had used ritualistic magic. With this new sentence structure, the situation could have Audrey receive a mysterious letter or news in her bedroom to confirm that the gift was about to be delivered. There would be too many possibilities as a result of this. Susie could read the joy and sincere attitude deep inside Audrey's heart as she subconsciously opened her mouth, hoping to stir the air to produce a voice. She had wanted to inquire about the gift, but she sharply sensed that Audrey's personal maid, Annie, was approaching. The alert Susie abandoned her original thoughts. She returned to the state of being an ordinary dog as she slowly wagged her tail to express her joy and anticipation. After making an excuse to head out, Audrey entered a chemistry laboratory that she had specially marked out for herself. She placed the psychiatrist's characteristic and supplementary ingredients on the table. "Susie, do you still remember the potion concocting process?" She cleared her throat and straightened her back as she excitedly played the role of a teacher. "Woof, I remember!" Susie already knew what her present was. In her joy, she barked. Audrey added, "Try to concoct it by yourself." Susie looked down at her paws and suddenly fell silent. Audrey was taken aback before a brief silence ensued. A few seconds later, before the golden retriever could speak, Audrey covered her mouth without any atypical response and giggled. "All right, Susie, there's no need to say a word. I know what you wish to say. You wish to express the fact that you're only a dog and am unable to concoct the potion, right? How embarrassing." At the same time, Audrey, who wore a charming and graceful external bearing, facepalmed herself inwardly. "Woof!" Susie nodded forcefully. Audrey took the opportunity and turned around. Soon, she finished concocting the psychiatrist's potion. She had previously asked Susie and learned that she had already finished digesting the potion on Wednesday. That's less than 2 months. Yes, a large reason has to do with how Susie isn't being noticed. She can run about anywhere in the manor or villa and eavesdrop, allowing her to read the true thoughts of the maidservants. That's good as well. She will always share the tidbits with me. If not for her, I wouldn't have known of the dark sides of many people who appear normal and kind usually. Audrey poured the potion into a bowl and placed it on the floor. She watched as Susie went over and began licking the potion as she couldn't curb the anticipation in her heart. Susie might be influenced by the potion and become unstable. But it's all right. Psychiatrist Miss Audrey is already prepared to use placate at any moment. Yes, I prefer the name psychoanalysis. That sounds more professional. Audrey stared at Susie with her beautiful emerald-like eyes with great seriousness and discovered that Susie's pupils were gradually fading and turning vertical. Dark gold scales seemed to grow beneath her thick fur, and the spirituality that belonged to Susie kept radiating outwards as though it was interweaving with the entire villa's space. After calming her somewhat nervous emotions, Audrey scrutinized Susie's state. As long as something abnormal happened to Susie, she would immediately use the beyond her power, psychoanalysis. Suddenly, Susie's voice sounded out in her ears. "Audrey, I'm done!" Audrey was temporarily at a loss on what to say. In her dream, Daisy returned to Eastborough and to the old apartment she had lived in for years. She pushed open the door and saw her mother, Liz, and her sister, Frasia, doing the laundry diligently. Daisy instantly became delighted and was just about to join them. She was in charge of ironing the laundry. At this moment, she heard knocking at the door. She turned her head and realized that the visitor was a young man in a black and white checkered police uniform. The officer had black hair and green eyes, with a somewhat blurry face. He held a notebook and fountain pen as he asked, "In the Capim case, apart from what you mentioned, is there anything else you didn't mention to us?" "It's all nothing important," Daisy answered in a rather groggy manner. The handsome officer looked down at his notebook and said, "It's fine. I'm willing to listen." Daisy looked back at the clothes which were hung up, feeling as though she had forgotten some instructions. She honestly described all sorts of trivialities. In the end, she said, "After I was abducted, my mother and sister had hired a private detective to search for me. His name is Mr. Sherlock Moriarty. He's a good man. Although he didn't find me directly, he later contacted a reporter to help me get compensated with the foundation money." The black-haired and green-eyed officer looked up again and glanced at Daisy before revealing a warm smile. "Very good. Your answer is very satisfactory. Do you still remember the private detective's appearance?" Daisy nodded. Without any alarm, she saw Mr. Sherlock Moriarty standing beside her. The detective had grown a thick beard and wore gold-rimmed glasses. It was almost identical to the one in her memories. After the black-haired, green-eyed officer sized up the image a few times, he seemed to vanish at some point in time without Daisy realizing it. For some reason, her mother and sister had also vanished. She ran through Eastborough in search of the familiar figures, but she ultimately woke up from her depression and sorrow. When she saw the dark ceiling of her school dormitory, she lay there in a daze for seconds. Daisy didn't make a sound as she turned her body and buried half her face into the pillow. By the corners of the pillow, a wet stain gradually spread out. The person who had entered Daisy's dream was none other than Leonard Mitchell. Although his investigation of the commonalities of the two cases was to give him time to deal with matters of his own, he didn't forget to act in a perfunctory manner. In the end, he really discovered a problem. In the cases of Lenevis and Capim, a private detective named Sherlock Moriarty was involved, including his friend, reporter Mike Joseph. Although they had only appeared on the outskirts of this matter, it's also a direction for the investigation. That Sherlock Moriarty looks somewhat familiar. Which fugitive is he? Leonard recalled what he had seen in the dream as he wore his red glove and entered the basement of St. Samuel Cathedral. Just as he greeted the team captain, Soist, he saw a partner approach and hand him 2 thin sheets of paper. "The information regarding the red-eyed man from the Harvest Church is all here." "Thank you. Do you want to have lunch together?" Leonard asked with a smile. The Nighthawk shrugged and said, "No, as long as you stop making me have nightmares." "Deal." Leonard smiled as he received the dossier. He stood there without being in a hurry to sit down as he casually browsed through it. Emlyn White. A vampire. Currently under the jurisdiction of the Church of Earth Mother. He once vanished for a period of time. His parents had hired private detectives to find him. Thanks to a particular Mr. Stewart, this matter was ultimately resolved by the famous detective, Sherlock Moriarty. Leonard's smile gradually froze as his expression turned serious. Sherlock Moriarty? He repeated this name in his mind. Klein wasn't in a rush to find an opportunity to engage in true acting. He toured Orvie Island's port city with the mindset of a tourist, finding a brief and rare moment of relaxation in his tense life. This city had mostly immigrants from Lone. The cuisine wasn't much different from the east coast of the kingdom, with the only difference being that there were rare fruits and all sorts of seafood here. It was also quite a unique trait of the city. This place was rich in natural resources and was located in a key location on the safe sea routes. The standard of living was pretty good. Even the farmers in the suburbs could save up some money through their fruit gardens. This didn't mean that Orvie didn't have poor people or the lower class. This class was mainly made up of people who were former slaves. Lone's parliament had long abolished slavery. After chewing a juicy and sweet fruit, Klein watched the sky turn dark. He took a turn at the corner of the street and entered a bar named Sweet Lemon. It was a famous gathering place for adventurers in Orivy. Klein planned on buying the 2 remaining supplementary ingredients of a marionettist, the relatively common Drago tree bark and Sonia golden spring water. At this moment, the bar was rather lively. There were many people holding up cups around the boxing ring as they cheered loudly. There were people who looked like adventurers at the surrounding tables. They were discussing all kinds of rumors in hushed tones. Just as Klein was squeezing towards the bar counter, he suddenly heard his name. "I'm Gehrman Sparrow. You should know who I am. I received a treasure map and need to hire some helpers. It's not because I'm afraid, but it's because I can't carry that much treasure alone." A green-eyed man in his 30s held half a glass of liquor and spoke to 2 men and 2 women in the corner. It was a mystery if they were merchants or adventurers. "You are also named Gehrman Sparrow? Treasure map. Why does it sound like a scam? My killing of Wormtongue has already reached this place from Byam? Yes, it was likely communicated via a telegram or visitors. Therefore, many people know of my name and deeds but do not know what I look like. Cheats are using this opportunity to pass themselves off as me to cheat others." Klein moved over as he came to a realization. The green-eyed man drank a mouthful of liquor and slammed the glass onto the table. "I don't mind whether you refuse or agree, but I hate it when people make me wait. Do you wish to be like Wormtongue?" The young man opposite him said, slightly intimidated, "I know you're a powerful adventurer, so—" The green-eyed man cut off the man's words. At that moment, he felt his collar tighten as he was lifted up by someone and thrown out the door. Klein didn't provide an explanation as he directly threw the man out of the door with a stoic expression. Then, he drew his revolver and aimed it at the spot where the man had fallen to the ground. He pulled the trigger without any hesitation. Bang! Just as the green-eyed man fell to the ground, he saw a spark light up at the ground near his crotch. He was so frightened that he swallowed back his cursing and scrambled away. Without any explanation, his weak performance proved that he wasn't Gehrman Sparrow. Klein ignored the victim who stood there in a daze. He politely blew at the mouth of his revolver before stuffing it back into his underarm holster. Following that, he walked slowly to the bar counter in the resulting silent atmosphere.